Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you how to plant the seed of a Vinca plant. So let's go. Vinca is a beautiful flower. It's considered a perennial in certain areas, but here where I live in Zone 5B, it's considered an annual, which means it only lasts one season and then it dies as soon as a frost hits it. Did you know that annual vinca is also known as Madagascar periwinkle? Well, it is. It is such a pretty flower, and I've had a lot of success collecting the seeds from this plant in the past. Last fall, I made a video showing you the process for collecting the seeds off of a vinca plant. What I'll do is make a link to that video down below in the description. You don't want to miss that. Vinca comes in a lot of different colors, and the colors that I've grown in my yard have included white, a light pink, a dark pink, and even a purple color one. And what I love about it is that it's so easy to collect the seeds from the plant. So once you've bought the plant or found the plant somewhere and collected the seeds from it, you can then keep growing that plant very easily by seed. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever grown vinca? And if so, did you buy the plant or did you plant it from seed? And what color was it? Please add a comment below. I'd love to hear from you just to know what your experience has been with vinca. I wanted to share with you some information regarding the vinca plant. So vinca grows well in a full sun location, and it prefers a sandy loam type of soil. The bloom time is typically from around June until a frost hits it. And when it comes to where is the plant hardy, it's hardy in typically zones 9 through 11. One important note is that the plant is toxic to cats, to dogs, and even to people, so you just want to keep that in mind. Last year, I had a lot of success growing vinca from seed, and I had made videos during seedling tours showing you how the vinca was looking. And I planted the vinca plants in a number of places in my yard, but the one area where it really shined was in a flower bed, which I call the old arborvitae flower bed. It's where I used to have some arborvitae trees that I had removed. And I ended up putting a bunch of different plants in this small little flower bed. And one of the plants in there was the vinca plant. And it really looked so beautiful. I loved how it looked in that space. I may consider putting it again in that same area. What I really like about vinca is it's pretty low maintenance. You don't even have to deadhead it. There are a lot of annuals out there that you do need to spend the time in deadhead for them to look great. And vinca is not one of them. It self-deadheads or self-cleans itself. And you just want to make sure you're putting it in the right location, being full sun, and just giving it the right amount of water that it needs. As with any other seeds that you're starting indoors, it's very important to know some basic information. One piece of information is to know what your last frost date is. And one way to find that out is to go on the internet and do a search. Personally, I like to use the Old Farmer's Almanac, and if you go on their website, there is an area where you can type in your zip code and it will tell you what your last frost date is. And when it comes to the vinca seeds, you want to give them plenty of time to grow. You typically want to start your vinca seeds about 3 months or 12 weeks before your last frost. Well, today is February 22nd. My last frost date, based on my zip code, is about middle of May, about May 15th. So if you count backwards from May 15th to today, there you go. We're at about the 3-month mark. It's a great time for me to be starting these seeds. One important thing to know when you're starting seeds is to know how deep to plant the seeds. You always want to look that information up on the internet if it's not found on your seed packets. And the seeds that we're going to be starting today were seeds that I collected myself. Therefore, there is no real information on there to help me with knowing that kind of information. So I did some research on the internet. I looked up vinca seeds and I wanted to see how deep to plant them. Vinca seeds need darkness to germinate. So that means you want to plant the seeds just barely on the top of your potting mix or your seed starting mix and then cover them. And you want to make sure the seeds are covered. I just use seed starting mix to cover my seeds, but you could use something like vermiculite if you want. I would be a little cautious though. I've never tried the vermiculite with vinca seeds, and the only thing I'd worry about is that maybe some light would still be coming through the vermiculite. My experience has been that I cover them with the same potting mix or seed starting mix medium that I'm using. And based on my research, I've also found that it does help to use a heating mat to put underneath your tray because the seeds need a nice warm temperature to germinate. In the past, I've never used a heating mat, and my seeds have germinated just fine. But this year, because I invested in some heating mats, I'm definitely going to be using the heating mats to germinate my Vinca seeds. Now, I will caution you do not need to use a heating mat for every single seed that you're trying to germinate. Do a search on the internet and find out what the temperature is that that seed needs to germinate. Some seeds actually need cool weather to germinate. So if you're not reading that information and researching it, you might actually be harming your seeds by putting them on a heat mat when they don't really need it. So it's very important to just do your research. So I want to share with you the Vinca seeds that we're going to be starting today. And you will see that the seed packets are just small little clear Ziploc bags. That's because these are seeds that I collected myself. However, you definitely can buy your own Vinca seeds. I know there are a lot of online seed shops that sell Vinca seeds, and sometimes you might find them in the big box stores as well. So we're going to be sewing a few different colors of pink. I have on here a hot pink, and then I also have a medium pink. And they might both be a similar shade of pink, I'm not sure, but we'll sew both of them. And then I also have a white colored Vinca. So let me take you in for a closer look, and let's sew these seeds. In this pot here, I have seed starting mix that I made myself, and it's a mixture of peat moss as well as vermiculite. You can use your own seed starting mix that you've bought, or you can make your own seed starting mix. And I've made videos showing you my process for making seed starting mix, and I'll link that in the description below. You can also use potting mix. I think it would be fine. So use what you feel comfortable with. Now, this seed starting mix has already been pre-moistened. I used boiling hot water and I poured it in here. I really mixed this up a lot, and then I covered this with a plate. And the reason I like to use boiling hot water is I'm trying to kill off the possibility of any fungus gnat eggs that might have been in the peat moss. Some people prefer to use cocoa coir instead of peat moss if they're making their own seed starting mix, and that's fine as well. So at this point, the seed starting mix has been cooled down since I put the boiling hot water in it. So when it comes to starting seeds, you want to make sure you're using a potting mix or a seed starting mix that's already been pre-moistened. And you can see here that when I squeeze this, I don't have any water dripping or coming out of this. But also notice that the seed starting mix is holding its form. And that is a good consistency that we want to use here. I like to use restaurant to-go containers to start a whole bunch of seeds in, but you can also use something else like a 6-pack or some other container, a yogurt container, whatever works for you. The key is make sure that you have drainage holes in the bottom of your container. And when I'm adding my seed starting mix in here, I want to make sure that there's enough here so as the seeds germinate and the plants start growing, that the roots have some soil that they can reach. But I also don't want to do it so that the seed starting mix is all the way to the very top. And what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure that the seed starting mix is level. I want to take out any air pockets that are in here. So I'm just pressing this down, but I want to make sure I'm not pressing it down too hard because I want the roots to be able to go right into the soil. And if you push too hard down onto your seed starting mix or your potting mix, then that's just really compacting it too much for the plants that are going to be growing in here. What I like to do is when I put seeds in a container like this, I like to heavily sow them in the container. And the reason is that my plan is just to keep the plants in here for a very short amount of time. A container like this takes up very little room under my LED shop lights. And as the plants start emerging, I can use a pen. I can very carefully, just by holding the leaves, prick out the plants, and I can pot them up into 6-packs. That's my preference, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can definitely just plant your seeds directly in 6-packs. So notice over here, these are the white Vinca, and there's quite a few seeds in there. We're going to start all of them today. I have a whole bunch of these little tags that came with some pots that I bought a while ago, little 3-inch pots. So I like to use them for different purposes. I like to use them for dividers and trays like this. And I also like to use them when I'm labeling my different plants in pots and containers. So I'm going to put a divider here just so that we know that the white Vinca is on this side. And you can see there are quite a few seeds here. So I'm very excited that I have this many of the white Vinca. I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle them on. And just so I remember, I'm going to put this bag on this side here. I have 3 different packets of pink. And actually, I really don't need this many Vinca seeds. I mean, there's a lot here. So I think what I'm going to do is I have this packet here that says medium, we're going to plant these in the center. And then we will plant just one of these two packets here that both say pink. We'll plant those on this side here. The next color of Vinca that we're going to plant are the medium pink, and those were collected last year. I'm just going to put a divider here. Put that bag there. And this one here says it's a hot pink Vinca. We do not need that many seeds. So we're just going to plant some of them. That looks like a good amount. I don't know how many are there, but that's a lot. And I've placed this bag here just so we can remember where the different colored Vinca seeds have been planted. The next thing is we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover the seeds with a light layer of the seed starting mix. Now it's very important whenever you're planting seeds, you want to make sure that the seeds have good contact with the soil, which is why I am pressing down here. Because when you think about it, once those seeds start germinating, the roots want to go down. And if they're loose and they're not in good contact with the soil, then that doesn't bode well for the plant and the roots. Now, even though this seed starting mix has already been pre-moistened, I'm going to add a very small amount of water to the top of this. The next thing is we want to cover this with some sort of a clear humidity dome. And the reason is we want to keep the moisture control in here. That's the best environment for those seeds to germinate. And also we want to make it a nice humid environment, which the seeds will also appreciate. I like to use clear plastic wrap, and I usually reuse the clear plastic wrap every time I empty out a tray and plant some new seeds. But if you have anything else that's clear that you can put on top of here, then you can definitely use that as well. Labeling is very important, and even though we know that these are all Vinca, I'm going to put down the colors here. I also like to put the date that I started these seeds, and I have a spreadsheet that I also keep all this information in. What's nice about keeping track of all of that is then next year you'll know should you have started a particular type of seeds earlier or later. So it's always good to keep track of that and keep a log of it, even if it's just on a paper. Now that we've sown these seeds, the next thing will be this will get put on a heat mat, and it will be under LED grow lights or shop lights that I have, and that helps with the plants so that as soon as they start emerging, they will be hit with that nice bright light, which helps them from not being leggy. As soon as I start seeing a majority of the plants showing up in this tray here, the clear humidity dome or plastic wrap will be removed, and this tray will be taken off of the heat mat. And at that point, it will just go under my LED grow lights that don't have heat mats on them. I'll be sure to show you in future videos my process for fertilizing these, pricking these out, potting them up, hardening them off, and getting them planted out in the landscape. And then this fall, I will show you again my process for collecting the seeds from these plants. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please drop them below. I always answer questions. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.